Okey, selamat pagi semua. Sebelum saya mula, saya nak bagi dua disclaimer. Okay, satu disclaimer ialah most of the sessions saya akan deliver secara rojak-rojak. Apa maksud rojak-rojak? Iaitu campur-campur. So I will do my best to speak bahasa Malaysia, tapi saya memang lebih selesa guna bahasa orang putih lah. Dan satu lagi disclaimer, boleh saya turun daripada pentas ini? Ini jauh lah, so saya nak turun sampai sini, lebih dekat, lebih boleh nampak wajah kamu. So kalau kamu tertidur, saya pun boleh perasan. Okay. Good morning. Tajuk saya pagi ini yang tajuk sebenarnya tajuk ini tidak saya pilih. Ini di-assign, dibagi kepada saya. Tetapi tajuk ini memang saya pun passionate. Okay. Dan tajuk ini adalah kepimpinan adaptive leadership in the digital age. Before we begin, I thought it would be worthwhile to talk about who am I, siapa saya. The chairperson or chairwoman was very kind to read out the very descriptive biography of mine. But just to give a bit of context, one of my core beliefs is when we talk about things like leadership, leadership is not just theory. Leadership is action. So I feel like I need to justify myself a little bit this morning to give you a bit of insight that some of the things that I'll be talking to you about today is based on my own experience. So as was mentioned before, I was from the non-profit sector, and my three key achievements in that sector was one, I grew a department that was not doing badly, but I grew it to 4 times the size, 400%. The other thing that I successfully managed to do, there was this two very difficult departments that for a long time they wanted to integrate and merge it, but it was challenging. But I managed to overcome those challenges with a team and managed to integrate, bring about change management and integrate two departments together. And of course, the third achievement was navigating my organization through the pandemic. Now, the pandemic hit our operations very, or it could have actually affected our operations in a very big way. But because of some of the principles and some of the concepts I'll be sharing with you today, we apply them as not just as an individual, but as a team. We managed to navigate through that. And about 2 years ago, I made a transition into the commercial world. And I started first as a HR consultant. And as a HR consultant, I consulted a few different companies, which I will probably use some examples this morning. And after that, right now I'm in this company called Averis. It's actually a shared services company based in Bangsa South. So I'm overseeing the L&D department with about 1,000 employees in the company. But this is actually my last month in the company. Next month, I'm going to another organization. I got secured a role about a month ago, and I'm going to be looking at organizational effectiveness. So I like to say that I do have a little bit of leadership quality. So hopefully, whatever that I share with you this morning will bring some benefit. So sebelum kita bermula, mari kita bincangkan fikirkan apa tu era digital. Sebab tajuknya adalah kepimpinan adaptif dalam era digital. If you think about it, the world has changed tremendously. Now, I am 37 years old. I'm not shy to share my age. And the reason why I want to share with you my age is because I'm a bit unique. I'm born in the time where actually I grew up without the internet. Anybody remember the time without the internet? Kalau nak berseronok, kena pergi luar rumah main kan? Tak boleh duduk di rumah saja. And I only got the internet in my home at about 15 or 16 years old. So the digital era has brought about a tremendous change. It started with a little bit, then the change accelerated. If you think about it, the explosion of social media. If you think about even the concept of smartphones. If you think about even now AI. And if you will look into statistics, kamu boleh find out that there are so many jobs that exist in the market right now that never existed 5 to 10 years ago. 5 to 10 years ago, was there such a thing as Chief Sustainability Officer? Pernah fikirkan ke? Ini Chief sustainability officer buat apa dia? Have you ever thought about it? Sorry, any chief sustainability officers here? My apologies, no offense intended, okay? But then there's things like social media manager. So there are all these different jobs that come across. And if you look at this statistic here, in 2023, about 5.16 billion people have access to the internet, compared to sometime in the 90s. That number was only 1% of the population. And if you wonder why, so if you ada challenges untuk manage orang muda semua, or that, if you're wondering why their behaviors or why their preferences are a certain way, it's because of this whole digital era. And then of course, if we look at businesses, how does this affect businesses? Now it's interesting to note that 74% of organizations mempercayai bahawa digitasi transformasi sangat penting. Tetapi statistik juga beritahu kita hanya 35% successful. Dan kalau organisasi lebih besar, MNC size, hanya 16%. And 64% of organizations yang ada implement work from home from one point or another. I know work from home could be a very sensitive topic. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Usually boss don't like and employees like lah. Huh? But interestingly, 64% of organizations that actually have some form of work from home report an increase in productivity. But this is also not uniform across the world. For example, PwC Malaysia employs a 4-day work policy now for some of their practices. However, in UK, they want to implement monitoring their staff if you actually read the news. So it's very, very different. And then of course, there's this hot topic of AI. I don't know whether I think throughout this conference, mungkin ada pakar AI yang akan cakap lebih banyak tentang AI. Tetapi saya bukan pakar AI lah. But one thing that I think we all can accept or recognize is that AI is changing the game. AI is changing the way businesses function. AI is also changing the way we work. And if you look at the statistics there, it says something along the lines of like, by 2030, which is not far from now, 2030 hanya 6 tahun daripada sekarang, it is estimated, dijangka, 97 million jobs. Is it million? 97 million jobs, yes, will be created. But at the same time, about 400 over million jobs will be deemed obsolete. So AI is both an opportunity and a risk. And of course, one other thing that most of us need to be very, very aware of is cyber threats. So have you ever heard this saying, oil is the new data, data is the new oil, sorry. And of course, there was also a very new industry because of the era digital. Tahukah apa industri itu? Mungkin kamu pernah di-approach daripada industri ini. Industri ini dipanggil industri scam. Pernah tak? Dapat scam call ke, scam email? Dulu ada satu Nigerian prince, dia akan email kamu. Sekarang, dia call kamu, dia tahu you punya IC number, dia tahu you punya kerja mana, dia boleh use all this information to trick you into parting with your hard-earned money. So this is how the digital age has evolved, and this is how data is also very, very important. And many organizations are now investing, organizations that are discerning, yang tahu, are investing into mitigating the cyber threats. So here's a saying that I feel captures the spirit, right, of adaptive leadership. And the saying goes this way: the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the realist adjusts its sails. You and I are people of emotion, orang emosi. Apa yang saya cakap kepada kamu, mungkin kamu ada reaksi emosi. Kamu tak suka dengar AI ini semua. Kamu tak suka dengar work from home semua ini. But this is the reality. And as leaders, what are we going to do with the challenges ahead or the difficult times? We can either complain about it, hope it will change, or we can implement practical steps and strategies to help us mitigate this. And to start off, before I get into adaptive leadership, it's also worthwhile to define what is leadership. So today we had a few quotes from John Maxwell to start us off. And John Maxwell also has this saying that leadership is influence. I like to expand on that by saying this: leadership is the intentional effort or energy applied to gain influence in order to drive impact. So if you will look at these three words here, okay? Ada niat, ada niat, ada pengaruh, ada impact dan kesan. Seorang pimpin, first and foremost, mesti ada niat. Mesti ada niat untuk take action. Mesti ada niat untuk make decision. Mesti ada niat untuk take control of your career, of your organisation. You must take charge. Dan lepas tu, mesti ada pengaruh. Sebab kalau tak ada pengaruh, kamu bukan pemimpin lah. Kamu mungkin ada pemimpin, tapi kamu guna style diktator. Bukan guna style instruction, bukan inspirasi. But ultimately, in the business world, in the real world, kita bukan saja ada pengaruh for the sake of ada pengaruh, bukan jadi influencer, kan? Kita mesti juga ada impact dalam peranan atau organisasi kita semua. So let's start off with this. And leadership, to me, it has two main components. Ada yang panggil gaya kepemimpinan, the leadership style. There's also prinsip kepemimpinan, leadership principles. And adaptive leadership cuts across both. What is leadership style? Leadership style is some of us take a more authoritative leadership style. Not authoritarian, authoritative, meaning you're more direct, you're clear. Some of us have a more transactional leadership style, meaning you like to lay out all the expectations, be clear, and then use that clarity to have transactions. I tell you this, you do this, you get this. Some of us take a more participative, delegative leadership style. There's a lot of books written on leadership styles. But there are also certain principles that, in spite of what style you prefer or what style you're more inclined to, these are evergreen principles that cut across leadership. Principles like integrity, things like resilience. These are all principles. And adaptive leadership kind of like overlaps over both, okay? Covers both. Now, in order to understand, untuk memahami apakah itu adaptive leadership, I thought it would be worthwhile to consider what would be considered the opposite of adaptive leadership. Because it's helpful, right, in life to think of things in the opposite to help define the other better. For example, if you were to want to describe what is happiness. Happiness, if you measure it against sadness, you can kind of define better or understand better what is happiness and sadness and vice versa. Now, if I were to ask you just to think about it for a moment, what is the opposite of adaptive leadership? It's not unadaptive leadership, okay? The opposite of adaptive leadership, in my opinion, is what we call traditional. Kepemimpinan traditional or hierarchical leadership. And to help us understand and explore a little bit more on these concepts of what adaptive leadership is, I'm going to do a comparison of comparison of hierarchical and adaptive leadership, traditional leadership and adaptive leadership. First and foremost, traditional or hierarchical leadership is very individual based. And adaptive leadership, however, takes a more collective approach. I would like to ask a question. Anybody here, you are football fans, bola sepak? Ada ikut English Premier League? Ikut tim apa? Dulu, I ikut tim Manchester United. Dulu dia menimbulkan perasaan gembira, teruja. Sekarang semua perasaan kecewa, marah, sedih. So oleh itu saya tak ikut lagi. I kena jaga I punya mental health. Okay? But I like to look at how football has changed. In the 90s and early 2000s, there was this phenomena of the super manager. People like Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, Arsenal. So whenever you had like strong rivalries, it was not just a club versus club, tapi manager lawan manager. Why? Because dulu, the way clubs were structured was that the manager had a lot of input. He controlled all the transfer policies, the training, the coaching. He controlled the facilities, how it was upgraded, what was to be invested. To a big extent, he even had a say over the finances. But over the years, football has evolved into become more of a business, not just entertainment. So you got all those big groups that came in that bought like the Glazers, Fenway Group, and then some of those rich sheikhs from the Middle East. So because of that, the way the clubs have evolved has changed. The way the clubs are managed have changed. So Sir Alex Ferguson was probably the last of the super managers, and the one that came in to give him a run for his money, yang boleh dapat bertanding dan lawan dengan dia, adalah seseorang panggil Jose Mourinho. Yang dia masa dia masuk English Premier League, dia baru-baru manage Chelsea. But now, where is Mourinho? Mourinho is no longer considered one of the top managers. Kenapa? Dalam evaluasi saya, dia tidak menukarkan style leadership dia ikut landscape yang dia ada. So now in a club, you must be more collaborative. You must work with chief executives. You must work with scouting team. You must work with the coaching team or the training team rather. It's very, very collaborative approach. So those very aku boss punya kind of like style would not succeed in this world. Even Arsene Wenger towards the later years of his career actually went through a decline. And if you notice, he did not actually go back into management. So that's the first example. The second example is hierarchical or traditional leadership. Decision, keputusan, normally is centralized, berpusat. But an adaptive leadership takes a decentralized approach of approval. Any organization, you can have all kinds of nice sayings. You can put all kinds of nice culture statements on the wall. You can buat banyak-banyak team building. You can do all of that. But what will really define, one of the things that will define the organization is who actually has the decision-making power. Who actually is able to call the shots and make the changes. A case study I would like to present to you is actually Haier Group, H-A-E-I-R. All of you heard of that brand before? It's a Chinese brand. They actually produce things like white goods, homeware, like refrigerators, washing machines, microwave, all these different things. And Haier Group, they actually take this approach called, if I remember correctly, is 人大合一. Okay, now this is Roja, ada dapat Mandarin dalam juga. Basically what it is they believe in this management concept where they break down their large corporation into smaller micro enterprises where different groups of people would also be in charge of their own P&L, profit and loss. You manage it. Another company that takes this decentralized approach is Spotify. Semua tahu Spotify tak? Right? Dengan music kan? Spotify practices as flat as possible organizational org structure so that each different teams or divisions can actually make their own make their own calls and implement certain things. The other difference is traditional or hierarchical leadership is focused on or is orientated towards the process or the product. But adaptive leadership looks at the needs or the behavior or the users of the people, pelanggan, customers. Semua tahu McCafe? Tahu tak McCafe? Boleh pergi McDonald's, boleh order coffee kan? But do you remember a time that this was no such thing as McCafe? Dulu McCafe hanya jual apa? Hanya jual burger, French fry, itu semua kan? Do you know how McCafe actually started? It's a very interesting story. It actually started in Melbourne, Australia. So in Melbourne, Australia, if you notice, if you remember back then, McDonald's, some of them They are very kid-oriented. So they will have a playground next to McDonald's. And what a store manager at a local McDonald's in Melbourne, Australia saw was that they got all these kids going onto the playground playing, but then all the parents are just sitting there watching. Any of you have kids? That's kind of like your weekend, right? You just bring them and you just sit there and you watch them. What this manager thought to do is, you know what? Let's start selling coffee to them. Even though McDonald's did not carry coffee as a core product, let's just start selling coffee to them. And that took off. And right now, McCafe is actually a full feature of McDonald's. So what did McDonald's do? McDonald's paid attention to their customers. They saw an opportunity and they leveraged on it. That's external customers. What about internal customers? So some of us here, like for example, I spoke to this gentleman in the morning, he's in HR. Some of us maybe, but we don't face external customers, but you also have internal customers. Let me share from one of my consulting clients. So we consulted for this tech company. They're not a big outfit. Revenue-wise, they are not bad, but the workforce size, they are kind of, they're not considered big. They're about 30 to 40 people. But the business does not require, the size or the scale of the business does not require a large workforce. But the founder of the company approached us and she had this one challenge. Her challenge was this. She said that whenever she hired programmers and developers, they would come in to the organization, they will not stay more than 3 to 4 years. No matter what she does. Bagi dia equity partner ke, bagi dia lebih bonus ke, bagi dia apa, dia tak nak. They don't want to share. And the reason they would tell her was that as a developer, as a programmer, I cannot stay in a company for more than 3 to 4 years. Sebab if I do that, ia akan nampak macam saya stagnate. Saya tak ada belajar baru pada program atau aplikasi. But this founder was very insistent. She wants to keep her people. She really invests in it, but we came in with a different approach. We told her, listen to your customers. These are also your customers. So we revamped their talent acquisition program and their talent management program as well. Essentially, what we suggested them to do is you hire the best people, you give him the best training, but you have the understanding that they're going to move on. And then you do a forward hire. What is that? That is adaptive leadership in progress or in work. So you understand this is the nature of your customers, and this is the nature of the talent you're looking at. This is how you adapt and how you change. And of course, ciri-ciri hierarchical leadership atau kepimpinan traditional is rigid, tegak, but adaptive is flexible. And what it means by flexible, it means that you have to review and reevaluate your policies, your structures, and all the different things that make your organizations work, not just the team building or the trainings. You have to actually be flexible and to try and to start to do different and new things. And that is very real when the organization that I was in before went through the pandemic. Because it is actually very natural that all organizations are inclined to having this thing called the silo effect. Tahu tak apa tu silo effect? Pernah dengar tak? Macam semua department dia buat benda sendiri. Tak kisah apa orang lain buat. Kenapa macam tu? Sebab semua organisasi apabila dia bertumbuh, dia akan menilai atau mengutamakan efficiency. So lebih efficient kalau saya bagi kamu tugas ini, you buat ini. Saya bagi tugas ini, you buat itu. But over time, they will create this silo effect. So for us as an organization, when COVID hit, we really had to break this because mafia bukan sahaja atau mafia atau gangster bukan sahaja di jalan-jalan kan. Di company pun ada. Ada manager, you tak boleh sentuh dia punya barang. You cannot approach their things. You cannot approach their people. God, only I pernah. Semua, the rest of you very nice and harmony satu Malaysia punya. Only I experienced this, right? So we had to really break those organizational silos and adopt a more flexible approach. And I'll come back to this in a moment, a very practical step. you have to look at the culture of your organization. Is your culture one on stability or your culture one on innovation? An example would be for the organization that I am currently in, Averis. So Averis is actually a shared services model. Kamu semua familiar with the shared services model? So some companies, what they would do is they will establish another company and they will outsource some of its functions, some of the more process and operational functions to a different company. Why do they do that? Is usually because of tax purposes. So the company that I am in is actually a shared services model from a very big group called RGE. Okay? And they are based globally, but they created the shared services center here. So when I entered this organization, I realized actually this organization, because kita sebagai satu company, kita tak perlu cari pelanggan baru. As a shared services, we don't need to look for new customers. Our group is 400 over companies. We don't need new customers. What we needed stability. And in my consulting experience, I also consulted for a timber company based in Pahang. That company, the boss at first, he wanted to do banyak inovasi, a lot of innovation, a lot of different things. But after exploring and discussing, we realized you actually don't need all of these innovative things because your business is fairly straightforward. Certain areas, yes, but it's fairly straightforward. But if your organization is one that thrives on innovation, for example, a tech company, or if you're looking at the FMCG space or anything like that, you're more consumer driven, then yes, that is where innovation is required. Now, what are some, apologies, the words are a little bit small, but you can have the slides and you can read them. What are some ciri-ciri utama for adaptive leadership? The first one is, maybe this is a term that you heard a lot, emotional intelligence, kecerdasan emosi. Even though AI is on the rise, we must recognize that most of the work and the business that we're going to be doing is with people. It's always going to be with people. And the thing about people is this: emotions affect behavior, behavior drives performance, and performance produces results. So if you want result, you will look at a person's performance. If you want a person to increase their performance, you look at the behaviors they're exhibiting. But if you want to change a person's behavior, you need to understand their emotions. All of us are emotional beings. Walaupun kita membawa wajah profesional kepada tempat kerja, kita pakai suit ke, pakai baju kerja ke semua, but at the core, we are still emotional beings. The things you say to somebody has an effect on them, whether you like it or not. The things that you do has an effect. The decisions that you make has an effect on people. So understanding this emotional aspect is very important if you want to increase your effectiveness as a leader, or even if you want to take on this thing called adaptive leadership. Now, the second thing, of course, is you have to be inclusive. One of the natural evolutions in my observation of leadership is, before, leadership is you have to be the best among everyone. Remember, hierarchical traditional leadership, individual based on the individual. You are the best. That's why you jadi the leader. But in a more modern context, or in the evolving of leadership, is now you don't just be the best, but you bring out the best in everyone. That is the CEO's job, kan? Actually, the CEO's job is quite tough. Not just to go and look nice, but he has to manage the ego of all the other C levels. CFO, CHRO, what other C that you have. So that is the thing about being inclusive. How do we manage pandangan yang berlainan daripada kita? Atau how do we menerima cara bekerja orang lain? Because dulu leadership traditional is, or pemimpin traditional is, saya bos, you ikut I punya way, not my way or the highway. But for more adaptive leadership approach, you have to be inclusive, take the diverse views into account, and then move. And of course, one other thing is continuous learning. I put there pembelajaran berterusan. It's very, very critical, not just for those in one thing. This is a principle of leadership. None of us should actually believe that we have arrived. None of us should actually feel that because of my vast years of experience, because of my achievement, I'm already there. If we are not careful, that can actually become our ceiling. But what we want to do to go to the next level is we want to make all of our achievements and all our experiences to be the floor of the next level, if you understand my saying. But we want to go to the next level. That's one of the big reasons why I transited from the non-profit sector, because I felt like I was already capped. I didn't know where else to go, so I made a big move, even though I could have been really, really comfortable. And continuous learning is not just attending more training, but it's also adapting new ways of working. In L&D, we have this best practice. Actually, effective learning is 70-20-10. You all know this, some HR professionals. 70 is actually doing the work. 20 is somebody teaching you, showing you. 10% is classroom learning. So if you're wondering why my L&D, they budget so much, I send all my staff to training, but they are not changing. Remember the 70-20-10 principle, because training enough alone is not enough. And the other thing is, of course, pemikiran strategik. Now, pemikiran strategik ada perkataan yang besar. Mungkin rumit juga. But strategic thinking, you can be broken down into 3 levels or 3 categories. Past, present, future. Past, present, future. Learn from the past and prioritize the present based on what you want to achieve in the future. That's what adaptive leadership is about, or what leadership is about. Leadership is not just for the now, but it's what's next, what is upcoming. So for us to grow as adaptive leaders or as leaders, we must be very clear on what is matlamat atau objektif kita semua. Kalau kita buat sahaja for the sake of doing, then don't be surprised if we are not going anywhere or if you're not yielding any results. And one trait I want to talk about is resilience, tahan rasa. And this is something that I think COVID-19 taught us tremendously. That all of us, we have to anticipate the risk of something happening. In this world, the world is digital era, yang dynamic, bukan static kan, dynamic. Dynamic maksudnya asyik tukar-tukar. We have to be very, very ready to face challenges. And resilience bukan maksudnya kalau ada cabaran, kamu tidak rasa. Maksudnya kalau ada cabaran, if you fall down, you ada energy atau effort, boleh naik lagi. It's not about avoiding the blows of life, but it's about getting up after you get knocked down. Both of us, as personally, in in all areas of your life, in your personal life, in your professional life, in your individual role, but also as organizations, we have to take resilience. And adaptive leaders, resilience is even more key because when things are uncertain, people will look to the leaders for certainty. So if they look to us and we are panicking, we are kalam kabut, gelabah, that will not also create the kind of assurance. And of course how do we gain that kind of resilience? It goes back to my first point, emotional intelligence. Because the key to managing others is first learning to managing yourself. And I want to give just one case example. If you talk about resilience and adaptive leadership, Microsoft. In 2014, this individual called Satya Nadella, he became the CEO of Microsoft. Now, Microsoft was lagging behind in the area of cloud computing, and that was an upcoming trend. So what Satya Nadella did was he had a lot of focus. He had strategic thinking. First, he focused, he realized we need to pivot and we need to go. He was decisive on that. But what he also did was he implemented inclusiveness in a very interesting way. He decided to collaborate even with competitors. learn and leverage for them. And a result of that was that they caught up with cloud computing, and Microsoft Azure is one of the products that you hear in the market, along with Amazon Web Services and all that. So, satu soalan untuk kita semua. Mestikah kita semua apply ini adaptive leadership? To answer that question, I would say, first ask yourself two things. Do you have, the first one you can ask from an individual level and from an organizational level. Is there a risk, risiko tidak relevant? From an individual level, evaluate the skill sets that you have right now. Is the skill sets that you have right now still going to be valuable in 5, 7, 10 years from now? Now, even though I'm only 37 years old, I know some of you, only, but I feel old. You know, my hair becoming white, getting balding. Over the weekend, I was a bit emo because, suddenly I look, how come I feel so old? But you must recognize that you're not going to be young forever, right? And unless you plan to retire, or you can retire, you want to continue working, because not just for money, but also you want to give yourself a sense of purpose, kan? But you must evaluate, do I run the risk of becoming irrelevant? And if the answer is yes, you got two things to do. Either you pivot, or you learn and add new skills. Organizationally, does your organization run the risk of becoming irrelevant? We hear of names like Nokia. We all remember the Nokia phones. Nokia used to be the market leader, market giant. Nobody was better than Nokia. But they quickly became very irrelevant because they did not take on this thing called iOS or Android. They went with a Microsoft system. They made a misstep. They thought that hardware could still be the thing that drive consumer behavior. So what were they doing? They were focused on the product or the process. Remember I told you just now the hierarchical leadership? They didn't look at their customers. One of the reasons why the iPhone or Android phone is very popular is not because there's cameras in it or that. That's one of the reasons. But one of the key reasons is of applications. You got a lot of funny different remember games was a thing as well at one point. The only thing you could play on a Nokia phone was Snake. Anybody remember Snake? Yeah, you can play Snake until the snake goes too long and you beat the game, right? But then the evolving of that. Another company that became very quickly irrelevant was Kodak. And Kodak, they became irrelevant. It seems on the surface easy to understand. Oh, people wanted more digital cameras. But the key thing about them was that their biggest revenue was actually from selling film. So it's not just the product itself, but it was the consumables that came with the product. So they became very quickly irrelevant. So that's to either ask that question about yourself and about your organization. The second thing you would like to ask about yourself and your organization is this. Do you have the risk, or do you run the risk of missed opportunities, peluang yang terlepas? Now, missed opportunities are not as bad as becoming irrelevant. An example, personal example would be maybe you you could not get a certain job because you did not have a certain skill set that you could have got if you went for the seminar or if you did your master's or whatever. Organizationally, I would like to tell you about IBM. Now, IBM traditionally, if you did not know, it was a company that was known for the hardware, the super frame computers. But they were late into the game for the consumer market. So long time ago, this is also the result of the digital, or one of the catalysts of the digital age, is long time ago, there was no such thing as personal computers. It was very rare. Nobody or not many people would have the opportunity or privilege to have a home computer in their house. But that soon be changed, and that became available. What did IBM do? IBM, they were actually outsourcing their OS or their operating system to Microsoft, and they were outsourcing other things to Intel. And because these two companies saw the opportunity, they leveraged on that and they became market leaders in the consumer sector in computing. So IBM still exists today. They have pivoted to providing services and consulting, but there was a missed opportunity. Another example would also be Yahoo. Yahoo actually had the chance to buy Google and Netflix as well. Netflix or Blockbuster. I don't know whether you know this company called Blockbuster. The Malaysian equivalent is Speedy. They had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they did not. So those missed opportunities actually cost them. And then you want to also consider 3 things. Number 1, your role and the nature of your business on whether adaptive leadership is needed. I spent some time talking about culture. So if your company culture is more stability, then that's fine. The other thing is your role. Some of us are in more controller roles, like finance. You can't be too innovative or creative with accounting. Creative accounting in the English language is not a good thing, right? So if somebody tells you you have creative accounting, they are not paying you a compliment. So you have to understand the role that you're in. Secondly, understand your customers. Understand the behavior, look at the behavior of your customers. Procter & Gamble, P&G, created this product called the Swiffer. You probably don't know the Swiffer because you maybe know it more as the magic mop. Tahu kan semua magic mop? Pergi Daiso, you beli tu satu punya mop, you just letak macam wet wipe, then you do it. It was not a product that was created by Daiso. It was a product that was created by Procter & Gamble called the Swiffer. And why they created that product was they noticed that their cleaning detergents sales of those items was on a decline. Now, normally on a decline, companies will do this thing where they will give more discount, give more sale, but they really went to understand their customer and realized that they don't like mopping, so they came out with an innovative solution. And the third thing is to understand the stage your organization is in. To illustrate this one, I will show you this chart. Each organization, in a very rudimentary way, will go through 4 stages. The entrepreneur stage or the startup stage, the collectivity stage, the formalization stage, and the elaboration stage. When you start up, everybody does everything. But eventually, you need to create some kind of structure. And from there, you come into more formalization. This is where silos happen, where people get broken into different functions or divisions. And then there's, of course, the elaboration stage, where organizations are fairly stable already. This is where innovation or adaptive leadership may be required to bring about reinvention or continued stability where you will have maturity. If not, there will be an eventual decline. Last thing, strategy for organizations. First thing and foremost, you must have, if you want to take a more adaptive approach to the way your business or organization runs, first and foremost, there has to be buy-in from the leadership. That's very, 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 very important. Before I made a bookmark in my point that a traditional organization is rigid, tegak, whereas adaptive organization is flexible. In order to make those kind of changes, you need the leadership buy-in. Right? All the top management must recognize this is something that you must do. Otherwise, it can be a very costly and frustrating effort for all those under them. Secondly, create a culture of learning and development. Not assign this to L&D, but you have to create a culture that values learning and developing. And this is kind of like tying in with the first point. The leadership has to believe that this is important and invest in it. Thirdly, you have to re-look and re-evaluate your organizational structure. So a lot of our organizational structures are hierarchical, layered, but an adaptive organization will go to more matrix or network kind of structures. Okay, if you can look that up, as I don't have the time to go into great detail about that. And finally, embrace technology and make data-driven decisions. This is why adaptive organizations thrive, because they don't just go on the experience of a person. Remember, traditional leadership is based on the experience and the capability of a person. Let's look at football one more time. Sir Alex Ferguson, he has the experience and he has the ability to manage. But in modern football, Pep Guardiola of Manchester City relies on coaches and analysts to tell him about which players he should sign based on their statistics and what kind of formation he should play based on the analysts evaluating how the other team plays, how fast they move the ball, where is the ball usually in the pitch, and what is the preference of play for the other manager. So he uses all of that, he analyzes it, and he creates and adapts his different tactical plans. That's why Pep Guardiola is a very, very great manager. And of course, if you talk about the commercial world, companies like Netflix, they study how much time you spend watching certain programs and all that, so they can tailor all the different liking to your preferences. So when you open your menu, you see programs that you're more inclined to watch first rather than others. It's a lot of content to unpack for a short morning, but I hope I stayed within time. But it was a pleasure to share whatever experience and knowledge that I have. I do apologize if I did not speak more in Bahasa Malaysia. As I mentioned, saya memang lebih selesa dalam bahasa orang putih. But I welcome you to connect with me even after the conference. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Please send me a connection and we can talk and share knowledge and all that. I am not a consultant, so I'm no longer a consultant, so I won't sell you anything, but I'm happy to share knowledge and experiences because I believe leadership can transform our workplaces. Okay, I believe it's time for Q&A now, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention this morning, and I'll pass it to the chairperson to facilitate the question and answer time.